Hey everyone, it's Viv, and I'm here with another Redrawing Old Art video. This one's another one from that phase where I drew all my characters with big heads, huge hips, and then no feet or hands. I think part of that was inspired by the comic Space Boy, which the art style, most of the characters were drawn with like just kind of swoops for legs instead of feet. So I think this character was supposed to have sort of like a love Valentine's Day heart motif or something like that. At least that's what the color scheme I picked seems to imply. So I definitely wanted to keep a lot of that like swoopy teardrop shape language to give it a sort of feel that invokes the imagery of a heart shape. Right away I thought this character looks like she'd be on stage or something, like a performer, so I decided to make her a singer and give her this cool microphone and be doing like one of those stage kneel slide things. I've been having a lot of fun with poses lately and doing dynamic stuff like this, so this was a fun exercise in like how to make a on stage singing pose look cool. At first she looked kind of hunched over, so I ended up changing that to make it look more like she's like throwing her head back. I think if I were to redraw this again, I would probably make the angle a little bit more interesting, since I always kind of default to this just straight head-on view. And this kind of atmosphere in particular I think could really benefit from like a upward angle or something like that that really highlights the pose and voice of it. So in terms of outfit changes, I wanted the collar of the shirt and the skirt hem to have this ruffly fluffiness to it rather than just a flat shape, because I feel like that makes it more dynamic, adding extra textures and stuff. I also decided to extend her socks into full fishnet tights, because that part at her midriff already looks like the top of some tights extending up above the skirt, so I thought it would look more natural if that's what it was. I was, and still am honestly, really obsessed with putting fishnets all over my character designs, but especially as a 12-year-old I think they were just fun to draw and they were pretty easy to make look good, so it was fun to put them just all over my characters. And yes, me being a bit of a baby lesbian who drew nothing but pretty girls might have had something to do with it, I don't know. And here I am onto inking. I think this one turned out a little bit weird because I kind of changed styles in the middle of drawing it, so it's done with this thicker inking pen, but then later I changed to a style that has a thinner ink, so the coloring ends up looking not bad or weird, just different than I would have done it like a week after this. Really, these redesigns are all about like reinterpreting the shapes and kind of turning them into something that looks a little more like an actual outfit, because a lot of the times I would make clothes out of just like shapes that didn't really make sense as an outfit. So like I'm still not sure what I was trying to do with the bottom of her skirt in the original. It kind of just looks floppy and weird, so I just scrapped that bit entirely. I also tried to give her more realistic body proportions, because in the original I was just kind of working off of what I saw everywhere, which was you must have the tiniest waist and the hugest thighs, and it was not a good time. I think I remember developing this art style at 12 specifically because I didn't like drawing hands or feet, and so I didn't care how awkward or wacky it looked to not have hands or feet. I just didn't want to draw them. But since then I guess I've learned to face my art fears and just do it anyway, and you end up just getting good at it by tons of practice. And now hands and feet are like a breeze for me. I don't even think about it that much. Now we're on to coloring, which I mostly kept pretty similar to the original. I did kind of darken things up a bit, and just because, you know, colored pencils can't usually produce very dark colors, it always looks lighter than you want it to be, because there's little white gaps in between everything. I've been into Vocaloid a lot lately. In fact, I was listening to it while drawing this, but it was at this point that I realized this character looks a lot like Mako, which I think was probably a subconscious choice of mine. But you know, what can I say? It's a vibe I love, so of course it's gonna seep into my work in any way it can. The lines for these fishnets are all done on a separate layer from the rest of the colors so that I can do my shading easier. Because when it's convenient, I bucket fill, and it's really annoying to do that when you've got all these tiny little spaces. So what I do is I just hide the fishnet layer and act like it's just the leg. This part, I think I messed up the lines a bit, but we're gonna ignore that. You know, I've found that the less you point out your flaws in your own art, the less people will notice. Like, if you don't talk about the things that are wrong with your art, 99% of the time, the other people you're showing it to aren't gonna even see those flaws. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but I did come up with a name for this character after the fact as well. I decided to call her Scarlet just because of the red theme. Now we're on to shading, and this time I decided to do kind of an interesting mix of what I had been doing in the past of soft and hard shading, I believe. Like some spots where I feel like there needs to be a sharper edge, I will leave that rough shading in there. But then for some areas where I feel like there's more of a curve and it needs to be shown that way, I'll do the soft shadow. You'll see what I mean further on, but I feel like that can make things a lot more dynamic and interesting and show the texture of what you're drawing better. So I like using things that way when I get the chance. As in real life though, most parts are gonna have that soft shadow because most things don't have sharp edges, at least not on humans and clothes and hair and stuff like that. So those flat shadows will show up on things like metal or leather, things where the shadows will often show up with sharp edges. I'm still getting used to doing soft shadows this way. Honestly, I think I should probably do a mix of this blend shading and airbrushing rather than just smudge tool shading, because I find in parts where I need it to look really smooth, this blend shading doesn't really cut it. If you want like a really seamless transition from dark to light where it's not clear that a brush made that happen, an airbrush is usually better suited for this kind of thing. But part of that is also just me being not in the habit of changing my brush size when I'm drawing, so like whenever I want a softer shade, I usually just try to achieve that with the smaller brush when using the bigger one would be so much easier. Anyway, I was really proud of this fluff effect that I got on the rims of the skirt and the jacket. I felt like I really got it to look all like cloudy and puffy. And now onto the legs, where you can see I've hidden that fishnet layer to make my life easier. Another shame about this process is I lost my purple UI. I don't know how it happened, but that script I was using to change the Photoshop colors to purple somehow just stopped working, and so now I have to go back to boring old gray, which sucks, but it was never that big of a priority for me. It was funny, when I was looking up how to do the UI color changing thing, some snob in the forums or whatever was saying like, this isn't the way it's intended, and so nobody should do this. They're shitting on what the Photoshop devs wanted. It's like, nobody cares. It's colors. Leave people alone. It's funny to me when people have really strong, genuine opinions on stuff like that just does not affect them in any way. And now we're finishing up lighting, which is honestly one of my favorite parts of the drawing process because I really don't have to be precise with it at all because I blend it all out anyway, so I can just scribble on vaguely wherever I want the light to be and then let the blending tool do the rest. Now I kind of went crazy on the background for this one. I decided, well, crazy for me. I still hate going into huge detail on backgrounds and stuff, but as usual I go ham on the lighting, and I wanted to make it really look like she was in the middle of a show, so I put all these lights in the crowd, and you'll see in a minute here I tune up all the color levels and stuff so everything's tinted this deep pink, and it turned out looking really beautiful. I'm proud of it. I love giving pieces big mood lighting like this so everything becomes super cohesive with a single color. But I do feel like I should experiment more often with pieces that have multicolored aspects to them instead of just one singular theme. And at this point I realized I forgot to color the line art, so I go back and do that real quick. For this piece I used the only color the interior lines style, which makes everything pop kind of like a sticker, which is sometimes what I'm going for and sometimes not, so I kind of flip back and forth on my line coloring style. That's another tip, is don't be afraid to be inconsistent and flexible. Like, sometimes things work well for one piece and not for another. And with just a couple more finishing touches, this redesign is done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I gotta go, my cat's meowing at the door. Bye!